Today we're going to interview Alan Evershed. Now, Alan is a 81-year-old former Chief Superintendent who worked for the Metropolitan Police. Served them well. You must be in the 30-30 club now, aren't you, Alan?
Not quite, because I did 34 years.
Oh.
So I've got 2 years to go.
But you've done 30 years. You did 30 years.
I did 30 years.
So you've got a couple of years to go before you get to your 30 years retirement.
Yeah.
How lovely. What a lovely position to be in.
I think it's fantastic. I think I'm very lucky. I was probably one of the last generation on the 2/3 final salary, and I reached the Chief Superintendent rank, and I'm very grateful.
And where did it all begin then? Where did Alan Evershed, where were you born?
I was actually born in 1941 in Norwich.
Norwich?
Yeah, well, my mum thought it'd be best to have me away from the bombs in London. It took me years to realise she actually took us nearer to the German Air Force, because
it just came straight across
the east.
Yeah.
But my granddad came, she told me later, my granddad visited us and said, best you come home. And he took us in. And,
wow.
And yeah, it's the war. You don't know, look, you can't help who you're born to, where you're born. You can't help it. And I was born in the war. And so I can't remember much about it. I can remember what they called a Morrison shelter, which I think was after a politician called Herbert Morris, I might be wrong, which was a sheet of metal went across your dining room table with sort of curtains of metal, and you hid under there. And I remember that. The other one, the most famous one, is the Anderson shelter, but we weren't posh enough to have that. And after the war, my early memories is living in a prefab. Yeah, everyone knows what about prefab.
Yeah. Well, you say everyone, but not everyone listening to this will understand, because as luck would have it, we've got people all over the world that listen to this.
Well, a prefab was a prefabricated house.
Yes.
And the great thing about it, 2 bedrooms, and it had a fully fitted kitchen. I mean, that's unheard of in 1946 to ordinary people.
Yeah.
Had an inside toilet. I mean, unheard of. And we lived there for a time. My memory about that was the winter of 1947, which was really, really bad. And my mum and I went out for a walk in the snow after dark with a pram. My sister had been born by then, she wasn't in it. And she stole some coal, you know.
No way.
She did. I thought afterwards, a long time after, do you know what? The night watchman knew that was going on, because we were all poor.
Yeah.
And as long as you didn't take liberties, I'm sure.
Was that from a coal yard? I mean,
yeah.
It's funny, because when I joined the police, we had coal yards, and because they're
gone.
They're gone.
Nobody knows what you're talking about.
No.
I also remember just after the war, we were in a prefab, there was an Italian prisoner of war camp near us, and I was still there. And all I remember about them is they gave us kids sweets.
And where was that?
It was in Harrow. Oh, sorry, it was in Harrow.
Harrow.
Which was Middlesex. It was its own county.
Well, that's changed over
But
there.
it was, 1965, it became swallowed up by London.
Greater London.
And so it's now the borough of Harrow. But then something happened when I was 10. A big discussion with the headmistress and my mum whether I should sit what they called 11 plus.
Yeah.
I was only 10.
So this is in 1951. 1951.
And what I remember about that is sitting the exam, and halfway through, the teacher said, "Children, please stop. The king is dead." And I vividly remember that.
February 1952.
Yeah, because you think, that's a big deal.
That's huge.
And
you're taking your 11 plus on that?
You're supposed to ask me.
Were you taking your 11 plus?
No. Did I pass?
Well, yeah, did you pass?
Oh, yes. And I went to this thing called a grammar school, Orange Hill Grammar School.
How funny.
And what I remember about that it was A string, B string. Well, of course,
where were you then?
I was in the B string.
Oh.
I was like Millwall, not going to win much, but I was there. And I was sometimes smart at myself, because they talk about these Mr. Chips and his inspired teachers. There's 40 kids. There was 60 kids, and I'm 45th. But I always come in the top 3 at history. Now, we're supposed to have a Mr. Cripps who takes under his wing. No, of course not. Absolutely not. I took the GCs. I passed 5, and then you start talking about, what are you going to do? And the lady, she was an art teacher who did sort of, what are you going to do next? What do they call it?
Career teacher.
Career, yeah. She said, now you're tall, have you thought of the police? Well, of course I hadn't. I was brought up in a council estate. And, in a council estate, unusual council estate, there were nice 3-bedroom, semi-detaches, everybody went to work.
Yeah.
It was just totally different. And you don't think of the police. I'm sorry, you don't. But I thought, well, that's a good idea. I can drive that. And I remember going to Borough High Street, which is in London, where the recruitment centre was. And what I remember is a recruiting sergeant said, you've got 5 O-levels, English and maths. You don't have to take the exam, son. So that's the first time I really thought, this grammar school thing's not a bad thing, is it? And I became a police cadet.
So you're 15, 16?
No, 16. I actually was in training school on my 17th birthday.
And where was training school then?
Hendon.
In Hendon.
I loved it because there's a lot of Scotsmen in this. They came down in their droves.
They still do, don't they?
Yeah, I don't know, but I think they're great people. By the way, I think they're great people to work with. But on the Friday, everyone went home. I got the tube to Edgware and walked. And so I was coming around the country.
Yeah.
I took the tube, 2 stops, Edgware, walked.
Jobs are good.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was really good.
17 years old, so we're now talking
58.
58,
yeah. No, we had junior cadets and senior cadets, and frankly, it was kind of apprentice, I understand that. But I don't think I really knew what to do with this.
No, I'm sure they didn't.
Yeah,
what did they do with you, though? I mean, you're 17 years old. You're now a cadet in the Metropolitan Police, so you're part of... And the cadet system was completely different to what it is now.
Well, there was 2 systems. This was junior cadet started in about 54, I think. But 61, they made it a cadet corps, and it was much more structured. So I was in the clerk's office and in the front office and the magistrate's court, where you got the cheese sandwiches for the prisoners, and that's about it. And that's where you learn things, I think, because I remember a PC saying, "Would you like to go for a walk, son?" I said, "I'd love to." And we went. It must have been a general election in 1959. He took us around all the polling booths, and I thought it was fantastic. I didn't know British democracy worked like that. Wherever we went, we had a cup of tea, you see, and it was great. But his name was Ralph Owers, and I've never forgotten his name because he was kind.
Yeah.
You know.
But you have got, and I will say this, you have got a brilliant brain for dates and everything else, and we'll come on to that later on. So you're a cadet.
Yeah.
Where was your first posting as a regular officer? How did that work for you?
Let me finish with the cadet.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Because I went to Harrow Police Station.
Right.
And I was at Victoria. I overlooked the playing fields of Harrow.
Is it still there?
No, of course not. No, sorry. Anyway, I used to watch the cricket, these boys playing cricket, and direct traffic and all that sort of thing. Not direct traffic.
By Harrow School?
School crossing, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was fantastic. But they posted me at Wildstone Police Station once. And I knew my granddad and grandma lived near there because we lived in a time. I thought, when I got bored, I looked up the charge sheet. And there he was, my granddad. Drunk. I knew I liked him. He taught me to play cribbage, you know. I mean, he's a good man. Oh. But it did make me smile to think, oh boy, that's what he thought about me joining the police.
I mean, let's put that into perspective. Your grandfather at that time would have been in his 70s?
Oh, well, he died. No, he died young, actually, so he wasn't alive.
Right, okay.
But he was a street trader where his stock mysteriously burnt to the ground once.
Oh.
Yes, I know. And he had to move, and he moved and became a builder, and they built these council estates, basically. That's how he started.
So, but he would have been born during the reign of Queen Victoria?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, he was. But you know what? I don't care. The modern thing is you mustn't stereotype. I was only 6 or 7. I knew he liked me.
Yeah.
And he taught me cribbage. I mean, come on. What more can you want in life?
One for his knob.
It's great. And then I became a PC, and they sent me to Albany Street.
So did you have to go back and do...
Oh, yeah, training. Yeah,
again?
Well, they trained us as senior cadets. And bearing in mind, a PC, by the way, in that time, was on £8 a week, no, £9 a week, 1 week and £11 a week for next week because you had to work your days off. They gave a bit more. We cadets were on £4, 10 shillings a week, plus 25 pence for luncheon vouchers. So they trained us cheap, in a sense.
Yeah.
They trained us as senior cadets. And then 3 months later, off I went to Albany Street, which, if you don't know London, is really that area around Euston and Camden Town.
Yeah.
And one beat was Regent's Park, or half of it. So it was a really working class. It's a good place to be. And
you didn't have the big townhouses then, Regent's Park
No.
and all that.
You did, because they were built by, I found out later, of course, they were built in the reign of George IV. They were fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
to walk around there was lovely, but nothing ever happened there. I mean, it was good fun. Oh, it did happen once. I was walking around there on night duty. Now, bear in mind, you walked the beat, okay? You didn't have radios.
No, you didn't.
You didn't have mobile phones, of course.
Definitely.
So the way they contact you was what they call a TARDIS now, don't they, from Doctor Who?
Yeah.
And in there, there was a bench and a stool and a phone that you could use and the public could from the outside. And when they wanted you, they'd flash the light on the top.
Is that right? They could actually
Oh,
flash
yeah,
the light?
yeah. You had to make a decision then. I mean, if it was 10 to 2 and you're off at 2, you might not see it.
Because you didn't get paid overtime then?
You did, but
Right.
how they paid you was they put time on your card.
Right, okay.
Okay, so they accumulated. After 3 months, they paid you. But believe me, when it got to 2 months and 2 weeks, the sergeant would say, "You want 4 hours time off today, don't you, son?" Do I? Yes, you certainly do.
And there's your overtime.
That's
gone.
your overtime. That's your yeah. That's right. You didn't get it, so there were just different days, and it's. You
So
see,
what did happen then? You're saying something did happen?
Oh, well, the thing is, you've got no radio. So I was walking around this beat once on night duty. It was summer. And it was about, I come out of the police station, around there. It's about 10:15, 10:30, and I hear giggling from inside the park, which, by the way, is locked up at dusk. I looked in there. There was half a dozen women in there. And they came towards us and said, "What are you doing?" And it turned out to be a Russian trade delegation,
Really?
the wives of, in the era of Yuri Gagarin, who went in here.
Yeah.
And I said, "How did you do that?" And the interpreter got locked in. So I've got a decision to make. Do I ignore them? Of course not. Do I walk back to the police station, which is a mile away? Or do I help them over the railings? So I helped them over the railings. And I have to say, we were all laughing. Because to me, they're middle-aged ladies, and I'm 19 or 20. And they're Russian. I've never heard of a Russian before.
No.
And they were laughing and giggling like, well, what you'd expect. And they gave me some plastic Yuri Gagarin things,
Brilliant.
And off they went. It took me ages to thought, well, I took about 10 minutes. Now, should I report that to Special Branch? Nah. I made a decision. They were genuinely got locked in. And that interpreter was hugely embarrassed.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I don't think they'd have got over those railings without me.
Well, you've always been a knight in shining
No,
armour.
not like shining armour at all. The thing is, I've never taken myself too seriously. And that to me was funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was funny. And that's the sort of thing that can happen to you, And people go about this golden age of PC walking the beat. I'm not sure it was, Paul, to be honest, because you had beats to walk and you had a beat book. And I remember one of the beats said, it was a beat in Camden Town. It said, Monday, Wednesday and Fridays, you walk up the east side of Albany Street. On Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturday, didn't mention Sunday, you walked on the west side. And it also said in the instruction book, you mustn't idle and gossip with members of the public. So, that's not perfect, actually.
No, it's not, because where do you get your information
Well,
from?
of course, but they didn't think like that. But so you had that beat and you walked it. Or you had some patrols as well. You had to patrol a whole length of Camden High Street, and you had to patrol the whole length of what are called Parkway, which is another big street. And you walked them for your 8 hours.
Of course, Camden's changed out of recognition now.
Yeah, I went up there quite recently, and it's not Irish anymore.
No, and it was very.
It was very Irish, by the way. Very Irish. And
Dublin Castle. Yeah.
Yes, I've been there a few times.
Yeah, yeah.
But people singing there, you know?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
some good bands in there.
They do, yeah, I bet they do.
Yeah.
But we went to another pub called the Stag or something, almost opposite. And it's just, look, it's a different age, okay? People don't understand. When I went on the beat, first of all, I went on parade and you show your whistle, a stick, and your pocketbook. And the inspector would inspect you, make sure your shoes are shined out, and off you went. Okay? The only way he could get in touch with you was by that light there, and you had to ring from there every couple of hours to show you're still alive, basically.
Yeah.
So you were very much in charge of what you did. There's no question of it. You know, I always think, well, I haven't always thought, but in the police, there's only a few ranks worth having. One is definitely the top man or woman. Secondly, the superintendent or the equivalent who runs the police station.
Yeah.
Third, the inspector that runs the relief.
Yeah.
And fourth, the PC who walks a bit and you don't know what he's doing. He's out there doing things.
Yeah.
And it's not worth having, I think, but the sergeant, of course, is the most important because he makes it run day to day.
Yeah.
And if you don't trust your sergeants as a governor.
And he smooths it. He smooths the passage.
Oh, he does it. Yeah,
between the PCs and the governors.
Oh, definitely. But that's how it was. And I'll give you an illustration of how it was different, okay? So if you'd arrested an Irishman there, you never charged them with assaulting you if they threw a punch at you, because it was only going to be a punch, and he's drunk. Because in the morning, he would say sorry, and he'd plead guilty, because you went to court with that prisoner as a drunk. You went there in the morning.
Is that right? So you'd stay on duty?
No, you went off at 6 and come back at 9. Brutal.
Oh.
And I remember my first arrest, and he was lying flat out, absolutely drunk. He was wearing a suit, and he had money, and we went to court. He pleaded guilty, and as we left, he said, "Do you fancy a pint?" I said, "I'd love one." And he thanked me because he really was out of the world. And I had a stomachache, I remember, and he said, "Well, are you all right?" I said, "My stomach aches." He said, "I better get you a brandy." And then I had my appendix out that night. So,
wow.
Yeah, and he told me to go and see a doctor. And
different era.
I'm not knocking to that. I'm really not. And the other lovely story I love telling, I took this drunk to a police box. So I'm ringing for the van, and I hear the telephonist say, "Van driver." And I said, "Is he playing snooker?" And he said, "Yes." And the prisoner said, "What ball's he on?" "What ball's he on?" "Pink." "Oh, thank God for that." He said, "He won't be long then." Because we all knew the van driver wasn't going to leave until he'd finished
his game.
Especially if he's on the pink. And you could have, I don't know, it's a bad word now, can't use it, can you? You could have that kind of banter. You could, and you had to, because there's no cavalry coming.
But you need that.
Oh, you
need that banter. I'm sorry, and I. It's not a job I'd want to join today, and I think it's commendable that people still want to join the police service. They're not supported by senior politicians, whatever party it may be. They're certainly not supported by the Mayor of London. I will say that. I'm not going to ask you to comment, but I think they've got the poison chalice. But you need to have banter, because if you trust the people around you, that trust is built around banter and camaraderie.
Well, Paul, the thing is, things don't change. If there's any benefit of the doubt, the police aren't going to get it. And that's from time immemorial. And I think it's because we are civilised and we don't really think we should have a police. But the truth is, we need them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So therefore, we're a bit resentful of them before they start.
Yeah.
It's just my theory.
Unnecessarily as well, because they do a sterling job.
Oh,
and since the first Bobbies were walking the beat, the Bow Street Runners, they've done a sterling job. And yes, there've been bad people,
of course,
but the police service reflects society, and society has more bad people than the police do.
Oh, of course it does. You know, it's been said by many people, but it's true. When things are going bad, the police run towards the danger, not away from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and it doesn't matter. I remember going to an armed incident. I took armed incident before, when the guns were locked in the police station, God's sake. And an armed incident, I said, when the canteen, any firearms officers here? And this detective sergeant, whoever he viewed with some suspicion, said, yeah, I am.
And you gave him his revolver and sent him on his way?
He didn't have to.
No.
He really didn't have to, because I had no idea he was an authorised firearms officer. It turned out he'd been on flying squad, and I'd forgotten about that. So he didn't have to. He could just, that's it. Yet people regarded him with suspicion. It was the early 70s.
Yeah.
I just think, when I wanted you, mate, you were there. You were absolutely there.
And I think they still have that. So you're at Albany Street. Where do you go to from Albany Street?
Well, I went. I got a job at area headquarters once because, believe it or not, they taught us as cadets to touch type on typewriters. So I was good on what is called a teleprinter.
Yeah. And
a guy in area headquarters, I didn't know we had area headquarters, right? He had one of the very first pig's valves transplant in his heart, his PC.
Wow.
And they said to me, you're good on that. Would you like to go there for 3 months while I recover? Certainly, I said. And when I get there, it's 1966. And it's about 3 months away from the World Cup. And as a result of that, here I am, a radio operator at the World Cup. Radio operator? It was an ex-army thing on your back. But in those days, after 10 minutes of the game, you walked around the pitch, you took your helmet off and you sat on the touchline and watched the whole game.
So let me get this right. This is April 1966. England have qualified for the World Cup then, the finest football team ever to grace the fields, West Ham United all the way. And Alan Evershed is now 25.
Yeah, watched the game.
25, and they've trusted you with the communications for the entire... So how many games did you actually see, Alan?
Well, I saw all of them. All the games at Wembley.
All the games
There was
at Wembley.
one game that was at White City, and this amused me. The reason it was at White City was because the Greyhound Association refused to cancel their Greyhound meeting at Wembley
Stadium.
Yeah. You can't believe it, can you? Fantastic. And I saw it, and I think, I thought we'd win again, so it didn't really matter. I also saw, by the way, as a PC, Cassius Clay versus Henry Cooper. I was put on duty there, and I was directing traffic 5 miles from the stadium. And God, I'm pouring the rain. This little police van drives up, this sergeant I never saw before, or again, jump in, lad, I need more security at the stadium. And then he marches us in there, and we're ran the gods, really, if the truth be known. But when Henry Cooper knocked Cassius Clay down, let me tell you something, you didn't have to see it to know it was an English rule. We knew it was Henry. And I thought, God, how lucky was that? It took me years to work out that crafty sergeant, well, of course, he wanted to watch the fight, didn't he?
Of course he did.
Well, I didn't realise that until I was young.
And naive. I'm going to take you back to the World Cup, Governor. So, we're at the 1966 World Cup, and who did we played Portugal during the run?
Yeah, I think it's 1-0, 2-0, and
Eusebio.
Were a fantastic player, but he didn't get in the game. The players I remember for the whole thing were definitely Bobby Charlton. Jimmy Greaves, very unlucky. There was no substitutes. Listen.
He was a local man when he passed away. He lived locally.
I know. Jimmy Greaves. Look, I played a lot of football. I was a hulking centre half. That's all I could do. My knees are still good. Why? So I never turned on the ball. If I was facing my own goal, I kicked it for a corner. It's as simple as that. That man. I watched lots of strikers. That man was special. And no one of them can tell you why they go where they do. They just do it. And I played football till my 60s. I played every police station I was at. My first police station, I went there with a man called Tony Carroll, who played for London Schoolboys at Hampton Park, right? And we played, he was class Robertsall. He used to say silly things to me. At my feet, Alan. For God's sake. If I put it on his head, he could control it. He never became a pro because you don't know this, I don't think. £20 a week was the maximum.
Yeah.
And £12 in a close season.
Yeah.
We get an average of £10 a week as PCs.
Why would you want to go and play football?
No. And by the way, I'm pretty certain he got it in his boot anyway when he played for his amateur side.
Yeah, of course he did.
And by the age of 29, he was finished. His knees had gone.
Really?
And I remember when I was playing for the SBG, who were a team not renowned for their finesse, to be honest with you. And I was about 37, 38. And this bloke, Tony Carroll, he refereed us. And I did a slightly late tackle, to be honest. And he ran alongside me, he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "That one's for old time's sake, Al, no more."
Brilliant.
He knew I was getting old and slow.
So you're at the World Cup final.
Yeah,
what was that like? You've got, I mean, patriotism, and I'm a patriot. You know, I'm a nothingist when it comes to everything else, but I'm a red, white, and blue patriot. I absolutely, and I love my football, and I love England football, and I hope they, you know, there's an irony that we're doing this today because obviously we're through to the next round of the World Cup.
Yeah.
July the 30th, 1966. What was the atmosphere like in Wembley Stadium? You are 26 years old. You've got the communication centre on your back. You've got all these old boys that have travelled in from all over the UK. Probably most of them are Londoners because they probably didn't get the opportunity to get tickets from everywhere else. What was that? What was that like? The sights and the sounds.
People say, they always write on it, it was electric. Yeah, it was. I got a sense. There were a PC and the people behind me, and you know, I remember there was no hassle, there was no fighting. We wanted England to win, and it was great.
Yeah.
And there was, you know, I don't know. It's very difficult because I later on in my career dealt with crowd hooliganism at various places. There was none at Wembley that day. None at all. The only bit of emotion I got was when I spoke to a Portuguese fellow after we'd beaten Portugal, and he spat in desperation because he was so upset. But he wasn't spitting at me. He just couldn't believe. He couldn't believe that we hadn't won. And I was there when Ratin, the Argentinian captain, the rascal, he spat at Nobby Stiles. Now, I could have arrested him, really, couldn't I?
You could have, yeah.
But I thought, nah.
That'd have been a bit of a showstopper.
Oh, God. No, I thought, no, don't worry about that. Nobby can look after himself. He was one of my favourites, Nobby.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he was the most gifted footballer ever. But you need people like him.
He was a terrier, wasn't he?
Oh, he was a wonderful player.
I'm a West Ham. I'm a diehard West Ham fan. So I met Jeff Hurst in 1996 at the Europeans. I met him there, and it was interesting because when you look at it in history, 1996, you're talking 26 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
26 years, or you take that back 26 years. That was 1970. We were playing in Mexico.
I thought we should. I thought we'd win again. I really just couldn't imagine we wouldn't win again. No. And we haven't. Maybe this time. And that's what being a football supporter's about, isn't it?
I know, the highs and lows.
This time, well, not many highs with England, but this time, this will be it. And I think people who don't play sport, I don't care what sport it is, by the way, miss such a lot.
They do, yeah.
But as they don't play, they don't know.
They don't understand.
Presumably they don't. I don't know. It's quite extraordinary. I mean, I think I've watched lots of great players. And I think Bobby Charlton was special. But I think before that, and I only saw him in film, Duncan Edwards.
Oh, yeah.
Just unbelievable. Duncan Edwards, they reckon he would have been in 1966 if he hadn't died, okay? Yeah. And they'd have found room for Bobby Moore. But they found room for Duncan. You just couldn't.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I was watching an article the other day. This isn't about why you're here, but I was watching an article the other day about George Best. And I wonder how brilliant he would have been if he'd have had the boots, the lighter ball.
The pitches.
And yeah, absolutely.
Oh, my God.
They'd play in mud.
I know.
Absolutely, and it wouldn't get called off, and everyone would start at 3:00 on a Saturday, and they'd finish at 5:00, and we'd listen to Sports Report on the way home in the car on your medium wave.
But you've got to look. There's two sides to these stories. It certainly suited the old cloggers like me, mate.
Yeah, of course.
Of course it did. Of course it did.
Yeah.
Football's much more skillful now than it was in my day. It is.
I think that I think the people have still got the skill. The difference is there has been a lot of technology and a lot of investment into the equipment. Now you think it's only a pair of boots, but actually they're designed in a particular way. They're like putting a pair of slippers on.
Yeah, I know.
Whereas before they were thick, they were heavy. The ball, I mean, absolutely.
Yes, of course. But if you're asking me, which I think you are,
I am.
Would yesterday's players shine today? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Or I've no doubt about it. When you see old film of Stanley Matthews skipping down there and crossing the ball, come on. And George Best, great player. Loads of great players, and they would still be great players. They definitely would.
Yeah.
I just no doubt about it. I'm just glad I played when it was hanging, because I wouldn't have been as good.
How many coppers would they have on duty, I wonder, at Wembley in 1966?
I've no idea. I honestly have no idea, but there was no security officers.
No, it was all coppers.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's overwhelmed by security and everything else. And in fact, the police can only go in if they get invited. There's no natural right of attendance.
So when do I get invited, I wonder?
When there's ag.
No.
Yes.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, cynical.
Yeah. Well, it is, but you see, things have changed. Because I was at Albany Street, by the way, the next satellite station was St John's Wood.
Oh, wow.
With Lords.
Yeah.
And when I went there, you directed me at traffic, and you went in again, and there was J Stand, it was called.
Yeah.
That was ours, the police.
Was it?
And it had a tea urn there. You get a couple of teas and biscuits.
Well, and of course you've got Abbey Road there. So you're swinging 60s.
Don't go Abbey Road.
Abbey Road, the Beatles. Yeah. It's just... I mean, I can see you down there. Come on, Alan, you must have a story around that.
I have. You've got to remember that St John's Wood, if you don't know, is affluent.
It is beautiful area.
Right. Okay. Lots of rich people.
Yeah.
Lots of au pairs.
Yeah.
Okay. So once, I think it was a Sunday, it was late turn anyway, me and my mate Ted Biggs, we were posted to St John's Wood for the day, and we thought, this is great because it's a sunny day, it's au pairs, we don't have the beach, so we're obviously going to walk together.
Yeah.
And you never know anyone to meet. And the sergeant there said, you are Abbey Road, studios at 4 o'clock or whatever. Well, it's a group called the Beatles. Which we vaguely heard of. It's a very early days.
Yeah.
62, 63, 61. And so they sent Ted and I down there. And if you've ever policed hundreds of 12 to 14-year-old girls screaming, you'll never want to do it again. You won't. That sounds sexist, but they got a higher voice, haven't they? and from that day on, to be honest, I always preferred the Rolling Stones. Because they just...
I knew you were going to say that.
They just...
So did you get to see the Fab4?
Well, excuse me, helmets like this, keep the crowd back. What do we see?
Yeah.
That's all we saw.
Yeah.
And but I think both Ted and I think, God almighty, what time's grub? It is awful.
Oh, yeah.
And no wonder we got posted up there. The locals knew better to get posted to that, didn't they?
You didn't realise then that what you were seeing?
No, absolutely no idea. No, honestly, Paul, I had no idea.
It's still an icon. I mean, you deal with tourists all the time now, and it's still an iconic place for the...
Well, dozens of times I've been up there crossing the road and all that. In fact, I've got a tray at home, which I bought in America, which depicts that scene. And if you look at it, you'll see them walking across the road, and you'll also...
1, 2, 3.
Right. Where are we?
So you say there was a police van that was parked.
Yeah, up the right hand side of that zone, and it was a Marylebone Lane police van. And I've sat in it many times because I was sergeant by then, and I was a sergeant. But anyway, I've sat in it. I can recognise the index number, and there's a guy standing there. He's clearly an agent of CID or CID because you can see he's a policeman, and of course. He still owns them. McCartney still owns a house around the corner, doesn't he? That he bought in the 60s.
Yeah, he does.
He does, yeah. As a tourist guide in my second life, I've taken many people there. I can't see the attraction of walking across the zebra crossing. But they love it.
Yeah, of course I do, because that's musical history, isn't it?
It is. Actually, it is. I understand that. I prefer the Rolling Stones. I understand that.
So the Rolling Stones, what interactions did you have? I think you said April the 1st.
Well, on night duty, station officer at Marylebone Lane, and that time, Mick Jagger had a flat in Harley Street, which was...
Oh, did he?
Yeah, it's not far from the Nick. And it's April the 1st, on night duty, the phone goes at 3 o'clock, and a voice says, "Jagger here." So I put the phone down. I honestly thought it was April Fool. But it turns out it wasn't, because he rang me back. And he said, Marianne's had a passport stolen.
Marianne being Marianne Faithful.
Yeah. So sent the area car around, they came back, they were laughing a bit, because, I won't go into details, he was in bed with her, and they found the passport under the bed. You see, which can happen to anybody.
Yeah, of course it can. But was she still in bed when they got round there?
Well, it was about 3 o'clock it was 3 o'clock in the morning.
How brilliant!
It was. My big favourite is Rob Stewart, of course, because.
Well, he's a local lad now. He lives. I say local, but he lives up near Harlow, doesn't he?
But he was a decent footballer.
Yeah, he was a decent.
People say he wasn't. I played against him twice, and believe me, he was decent. And I bumped into him and Penny Lancaster, before they got married, in a pub called the Town of Ramsgate in Wapping.
Yeah.
I had a dozen American sailors, officers. I was taking a pub call, and there he is. Now I've got to do it. I went up to him and said, "Look, I shouldn't do this, but I've waited 30 years for this." He said, "Why is that?" I said, "Because you kicked me." And he said, and this is true, he said, "When was that?" And I said, "Who you played?" I said, "Islington Police." He said, "We played on AstroTurf." I said, "We did." He said, "We played in the White Hart." I said, "No, it was a White Horse." He said, "I remember that."
Bloody hell.
Yeah. And he was a decent player. He was a midfield player. He's up, of course, AstroTurf, he could shine. I couldn't, because it was smooth, wasn't it? So, but he did something I don't think you can do very easy as a pop star. He invited the ladies to come over and talk to him. I really don't mean like you want to sue me. He didn't do it. He did it in a nice way. And he went there, he took photographs and selfies. And then Penny Lancaster came. Of course, she's a special constable now, isn't she?
She is in the city, yeah.
So it was nice. And by the way, I don't want to be cynical here, but I didn't have to work very hard for the rest of the time.
No, I bet you didn't. It's interesting. When I was a governor over at Epping, I picked up the phone and it was his brother-in-law who's his estate manager.
Okay.
And they had a problem with parking by his old house. And I got invited up there and I was actually running an undercover job in the area, but they put me back there in uniform because there was some other skullduggery taking place. But anyway, and I go there and as we're driving around on the golf trolley, we see the football pitch, which, is immaculate in these green and white Celtic colours on the nets and whatever. And out walks Rod Stewart. And I'm, I like Rod Stewart. I like the faces. I like all of it. And anyway, we're standing there talking. "Oh, I've heard about you, Paul." "Yeah, of course you have, Rod. You've heard all about me, haven't you?" And I always remember as a schoolboy, I was walking around delivering newspapers, and he'd been removed from a flight before it took off to go to New York because he'd got, I think it was Britt Ekland's breast. He'd removed her breast from her clothing on the plane, and they asked him to leave. And I had this conversation with him, and he was laughing. He goes, "Oh, I remember that," and he was so down to earth. Yeah. So, and even now, he'll eat in the local restaurants, drink in the local pubs. He's very, very down to earth.
He really is. And I was in hospital having the nose operation from playing football. I'll never forget the Walthamstow Avenue winger. He did one. I swear he did. Anyway, because I'm in the Met Police team, and after that ruined my career. Anyway, I'm having a nose job, and the guy in the next bed is a young man, and he's. It turns out he had ribs that didn't grow, so he had plastic ones there, and he's depressed. And in walks Rod Stewart with all these gaggle of girls, flowers for him. Turns out they're neighbours. They know each other well, and Rod Stewart come in, and that's how the football matches started, to be honest.
Right.
That's how it started, and I've always had a soft spot for Rod Stewart, because he was decent that night, and he never forgot his old mate. The second time I played against him, I was a ringer for Barnet Police. I didn't tell him afterwards. But you know what he used to do, don't you? He used to play at Hampstead Fields. I think they're called Hampstead Fields.
Right.
You did ordinary Sunday morning stuff like that. And I played for this thing called Barnet. And he turned up in his Rolls Royce with half the team, you know. He did.
Yeah.
He did. And took him home in a dirty boots. There was nowhere to shower there. And he was, a decent bloke.
Yeah.
Good entertainer. And a decent footballer.
Yeah,
no doubt
absolutely.
about that.
Oh, it's interesting. Isn't it? He stopped for one of my PCSOs. There was a fight in Epping High Road.
Did he?
And he stopped, got his driver to get out and give her assistance. And afterwards, he said, my boss would like to meet you. And he's sitting in the car with Penny, and they invited her to the weekend barbecue where they had all of, Robbie Williams and the whole lot playing football there. But no.
Decent man. He's not forgot his roots, no question that. Yeah. Apart from the fact he loves Scotland, he's a decent bloke.
Yeah. You're now Sergeant Evershed. What happens next? Where do you go from?
Well, I sat an exam to become a station sergeant.
You had to sit an exam then?
Oh, well, this is wonderful for me. Because in those days, it's very archaic. You sat an exam which was competitive. So if they wanted 100 sergeants, you had to finish in the first 100. And it was based solely on the law. Extraordinary, isn't it? And I was good at remembering dates, etc.
Yeah.
So I passed the sergeant's exam high up, and I had a chance to go to Bramshill, which was
special course.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get there. For some unknown reason, I don't know why, they didn't choose me. And then the next one was station sergeant. And I remember I came 8th, and I only wanted 30. But because it suited me, I could go to the exam. So the station, they sent me to Caledonia Road. You don't know it? It's closed. In fact, everywhere I've ever served is closed. And it was a very working class area near King's Cross.
Yes.
And something extraordinary happened. I was very lucky. A man came to take over, a chief inspector called Lou Holness. Now, you've never heard of him? Nobody has.
No.
He's never been on a leadership course in his life. You would follow him anywhere. He just had such charisma. I can't tell you. He's just fantastic. And he taught me a lot. He taught me that you've got to get everybody together. Don't separate from the CID. Don't separate from the mounted branch, because we had horses there.
Right.
Don't separate from the SBG, and you can use them all. And he was just brilliant. And of course, he was a fantastic vice man. He really was fantastic. As a sergeant, which had been a sergeant for years in Brixton, they used to put him in the clubs. He was 5'6", smoked like a great. Hasn't run a book on management, he didn't need to. I'll tell you what this man was like. You read, I think, this man thinks out of the box. No nonsense, normally. This guy said to us one day, I've entered us for the Metropolitan Police flower competition. We said, we haven't got any flowers. He said, I know, he said. But I'm going to get these flower pots and put them all around his head. But why? He said, well, the Queen Mother is the judge. And we got police horses in the stables here, and she loves horses. Became 3rd. The Queen Mother turns up. She spends not all her time, most of the time with the horses.
Yeah.
Then she goes up to Lou's office and discuss politics, I suppose.
Yeah.
Of course. Now, I like to think I'm an unorthodox thinker, but I would never have thought of that.
No.
Not in a
month of Sundays.
No, you just wouldn't, would you? But that's the way his brain worked. And he sent me one day, he gave me £10. He said, go and get 2 bottles of gin. So what was that? What he said? Roger Bannister. 4 minute miler?
Sir Roger Bannister.
He's opening the AstroTurf. I said, yeah. He said, well, Lady Mayor of Islington's here, and I know she likes gin. How do you think like that? Not on the spot.
Yeah.
Off she goes in his office. And he never really had a lot of trouble with politicians in Islington. I'm not sure. Maybe that wasn't him, but...
Well, I'd like to think it's the same now, but it's not. I know it's not.
Well, you see, don't get me going on that for me all day. Because I learnt that from him a little bit, but also a home beat officer said to me when I was Chief Supt, it's a Christmas party, so you lot must come. We're a little bit of a disco. And we've been saving all year for it. Well, to be honest, I was quite impressed because he kept a straight face and so did I. And they've been collecting for it, so go down there.
Of course I do.
There was no scotch, it was wine a bit.
Yeah.
And he says to me, he said, go and ask that lady to dance there, it's rock and roll. I know you like it, I do. I said, why? He said, well, she is one of the leading lights in the Labour Party here. She's not a councillor, but believe me. So
she's a mover and shaker. Yeah.
And he then used to come to me and say, the questions that she'll ask at the next meeting is such and such and such. Now, would I have known she liked what? No. He did. Did it help? I don't think it helped at all.
Yeah, of course.
That's thinking out of the box as well. That's for a PC.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but I think that political savvy through the ranks. Is it still there? I don't know. I think there's too much emphasis on other things.
No, Paul, I think it's still there.
Yeah, I think
it's just that we don't believe it.
Yeah. Well, I think we believe it.
Yeah, no, we
but
don't.
I think there's fewer people.
No, we don't believe the objects of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Possibly. I don't know.
Well, what year did you get promoted to inspector?
70.
1970. So you're 29 at this point.
And they send me to Romford, which is one of the few police stations still open.
God's country.
Well, then they sent me.
Were you in a police house then? Did you?
No. I bought a house in Aveley, Essex.
Oh, you were posh then.
I couldn't afford anything else. But they sent me there, and I did shifts. And then they sent me as a deputy unit commander at Hornchurch police station, closed. And I served under a chief inspector who'd been a pilot of Mosquitoes in World War II.
Really?
And crash landed. And was captured by the Japanese. And he couldn't deal with Japanese people. But he wasn't rude. He would, if they came to the counter, he would ask you to deal with them.
Yeah.
But God almighty, he was so good on paper. He said, mate, I'm nearly retired. Do what you like. Make yourself known. And I'll write your reports for you. Help you with them. It's brilliant. I can't tell the story of Dinger Bell because it's not fair. Don't like to mention names. But in my career, I have met two really outstanding PCs for thief takers who couldn't explain to you how they did it.
No.
And I don't think, the modern thing is you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't stereotype. It's nonsense. These two guys, one at Hornchurch and one at Caledonia on the SPG, they just did it.
But it's a sixth sense. I mean,
it is. Oh, no, definitely. I didn't have it.
Yeah.
I was a good witness, by the way, but he just had it.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody before pick up a crime book, honestly. Remember the crime books? Read through it. And he picked the phone up. Would you like to come and see me, Harry, wherever it is? Because he knew it was...
That was his MO, and he knew that the description was him.
Absolutely right. But, anyway, Hornchurch was great. And you see, you learn, don't you?
Yeah, of course you do.
I applied to join the SPG.
The SPG. What did SPG? Special Patrol Group?
Yeah, that's right. They were a group of police officers at 6 bases around London who were basically used to flood areas, because there were 30 of us, 30 PCs, 3 sergeants, a couple of women police, inspector, and you flood the area for a month to try and displace the crime, arrest people.
Yeah.
Okay? But you're all firearms officers.
Were you a shot then? You were firearms?
I was made of firearms, one of the worst. Honestly, I got through. Sometimes think my rank helped there. I don't know, but I wasn't very good. But you got deployed at what would be troublesome events.
Okay.
Because I don't recall ever being sent to police a Women's Institute march. You just wouldn't.
No.
Okay, so you know what talked up. And it was fantastic 5 years. But what I learned from is I applied for this job And the chief superintendent didn't want me to go, and the commander said, I'm going to recommend you. I said, thank you. He said, I'll tell you why I'm going to recommend you. If you get promoted out of it, good luck. If you don't, you'll be a far better inspector when you go there for the experiences you learn. I tell you the point, I've never ever turned anybody down for my own selfish reason to keep them, because I know,
yeah,
and I don't care what it is actually, yet they will come back better.
Yes.
So I look.
And you were an inspector then?
I was an inspector.
So what year was this?
75 by then.
75.
Yeah, and within 6 weeks, I was at the Spaghetti House siege, which was an Italian restaurant that was besieged by people, armed, And then December, Balcombe Street, which was the famous IRA siege.
So Spaghetti House, I mean, for those listening, through the 70s, we had some serious issues with the IRA, didn't we, in London?
Yeah, the Spaghetti House was really two armed criminals going into a Spaghetti House, which is an Italian chain.
Yes. Oh, I didn't realise that. I thought that was IRA. No.
And they surrendered in the end, and I remember I was handcuffed to one of them as we took me into the police station. That's about it. But the reasons for that were tempers were high.
Yeah.
Because, they were armed and
And you're an inspector, so you've got a modicum of sense.
Well, not sense, but
restraint.
Well, I see. We'll go on to armed police later if you like.
Yeah.
Because I have enormous respect for them.
Yeah, I have.
And I'm a member of their Friends Society, actually. Not that we do anything, but because there we are. Balcombe Street was the big one, wasn't it?
So, talk me through that then, now.
Well, what they did, the yard decided to put pairs of PCs in plain clothes around Mayfair, and the reason it was Mayfair was the IRA were firing at restaurants, posh restaurants.
Right, okay.
And the idea was these plain clothes officers would then radio help from the SBG who were on the outside, because we were armed. So this all happened near Marylebone Station. Now I'd walked the beat round there, even though my unit was in Gypsy Hill, South London. So I was the only one who knew where we were going.
Yes.
So we turned up. If we weren't the first ones, I was very attentive. And they decamped and they shot at not my carrier, I think it was one of the other carriers. And the two PCs got bravery awards, quite right, so they fired them. And they holed up in this council flat in Balcombe Street, which is just behind Marylebone railway station.
Right.
Actually. And, the siege took place. I mean...
And these are IRA?
Oh, they are IRA.
Active IRA?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing about it was... And that's once again lessons. You see, I had a gun, and so did my sergeant. There were actually two per carrier, and I gave it to the inspector and the sergeant. And I was, honestly, Paul, I was carrying this gun for about half an hour. I thought, why am I carrying a gun? It's a siege. I should be organising.
Yeah. I'm making the decisions here.
Yeah,
I'm not.
So I gave the gun to Maleary, and off he went.
Yeah, that's right.
But the hierarchy made a mistake there. But I bet they didn't do it again. And then it's so funny because there was a little Muse Street opposite, and there was a properly registered with DVLA, what they call it today, tank there.
Really?
Well, say tank. Maybe it's an armoured.
Yeah, like a small armoured vehicle.
Yeah.
Scout type of it.
It was there. Ideal. A, I think they probably thought the army were there.
Yeah.
B, we could post people in there, couldn't we?
Yeah.
That's just luck, isn't it? And it lasted 5 days.
So what happened then? So because the great Peter Imbert was there.
So Peter Imbert was a superintendent in the special branch who was negotiator.
Right, okay.
Now, they made these negotiators quite recently to talk people out.
Yeah.
I can't remember their first use, Paul, but it was quite recent. But he's a negotiator. And I'm there one day, and I'm in the flat above with the Chief Superintendent of SVG. And Peter Imbert is negotiating. And these gunmen had thrown their field telephone out onto the balcony. So Peter Imbert is telling them that we are going to pick it up and it'll go past the window, but we're just trying to get the phone back to give you a fresh one. We're not threatening you.
So we'd already supplied them with a phone?
Yeah, we've supplied them with that, yeah. So as I was standing there, Peter Emmett's doing this. I looked at the chief superintendent and said, who's going to do that then? Because there's nobody to put it up. He said, well, I'm the chief superintendent, so it's not going to be me. We kind of narrowed it down to me. And so my claim to fame is I picked this thing up, and off it went, and I got a photograph of it in my office of me doing that.
But you make it sound as if you just picked it up.
You pulled it up.
Was there a balcony there?
Yeah, on a balcony. You pulled it up to the next balcony, basically.
Yeah, so you're out leaning across. You've got all these armed police officers.
Oh, don't go there. They're SPG blokes, like that, from traffic. And I thought, that's Bob Aldrich, Inspector of 3. He's a worse shot than I am. I did. I remember thinking that. It's terrible. Oh, God. And I had that photograph in my office, and Peter Emmett visited me one day, and he saw it. He said, I've been waiting years to meet you. He said, what's that? And I told him the story. He said, did that really happen? He said, I assumed there was someone there to do that. Well, I said, of course you would. It was me.
Brilliant.
Yeah, well...
And they got subsequently convicted and locked up.
Yeah, they did, yeah. It was a good lesson. The other thing I did there, and I'd never really heard of the SAS, but they called the SAS in. And this young captain, I was dedicated to help this young captain get curtains, lace curtains, right? Mm-hmm. So they could be behind it. And I said, I know. And I took them to Selfridges. And I explained it to the man in charge. I got them just like that.
Yeah.
Just like that. Absolutely no problems. I'm not even sure he charged us, to be honest with you. Wait. That's my claim to fame. I got the curtains.
So you got a few claims to fame. So
not really, but you see, the thing is, if you get a job you enjoy, you never work again. If you ever said that, it was probably some Roman. It's right.
But it's absolutely right.
It's right. You know.
What year did you finish on SPG then?
79. And I'd been in a few things. There was there was a march through Lewisham in North South London of the National Front.
Yeah.
And it's always referred to that. It got very violent.
But they
were attacked by left wingers.
Yeah.
And what my abiding memory of that again is they gave us shields for the first time. Right? But they put them in a little van following our 3 vans, driven by a civilian. And of course, when we wanted the shields, they were the other side of the crowd.
Yeah.
So we had to charge the crowd with batons out to get our shields. They never did that again, the authorities. To be fair, we always carried them on our carriers after that.
And of course, at that time, police officers didn't have the protective clothing that
they've
got now.
No, we didn't.
I mean, I remember vividly watching some of this on the television. Brixton, for instance, they would be wearing their normal police uniform, police hats. They're using the lids from the dustbins.
Oh, yeah. Damned at Notting Hill Carnival in 76, by the way. Well...
And it's interesting because Notting Hill Carnival is still a flashpoint for Metropolitan Police every bank holiday.
Well, the truth is, whose eyes do you want to look at it? Do you want to look at the million or so tourists that go there? They're nice eyes, see that. Do you want to look at the residents who love living in Notting Hill, which is lovely, except they have to go away for the weekend? Do you want to look at it at the police point of view? Or do you want to look at the people at 9 o'clock at night on a Monday, the last night, when it gets dark, go rampaging through the streets from people? Whose eyes do you look through?
And throwing bottles at each other. And
throwing.
It's frustrating because what is basically a really good community event is destroyed by a handful of imbeciles.
Every year. Every single year.
And you'd think we'd have the intelligence to identify who those are to deal with them before they even got through the door. But anyway, that's
you can't, I don't know. All I know is I did it as an inspector 3 times, and I did it as a chief superintendent running an area. And
it's frustrating.
It is frustrating because you know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's still happening.
Yeah, it's still happening now. 40 odd years on.
I don't know the answer, mate. I really don't. I know.
Well, I probably do, but I can't say it on here.
No, I can't say it. My daughter's a serving police officer. She's done it twice. She hated it.
Yeah. It's intimidating.
It is. It's frightening.
Really intimidating.
It really is. If you're on the SPG, it's a bit easier because you know you're going to be backed up.
Were you there? Was it south of when Blair Peach was?
Blair Peach was a New Zealander, and he's a teacher. And I don't know what it was about. I can't remember.
No.
But I wasn't. I was there, but by that time, I was a chief inspector.
Right. Okay.
And I took a contingent from Woolwich and places. My big memory is diving out of the coach, looking at me on my own. I'm used to the SPG. They came. My division. They came. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember it was really violent. And that gets me to something else if you want to talk about public order. Do you remember Boris Johnson that was?
Yeah.
And when he resigned, he said something about the herd of bison they charge and they can't stop. That's what a crowd's like. I don't.
Oh, yeah.
When a crowd starts running, they don't know why. I swear to God, they don't.
No, they don't.
And I remember going to somewhere at the SVG, and they called up this van that should have 10 PCs in it, and I'm in there with the driver because the rest have gone out to do other things, and it says uniform 3-1, uniform 3, uniform 3. Would you go so? Yes. And I said to the driver, do you know what? That had been recorded at Scotland Yard as 10 PCs, a sergeant and an inspector went, but actually it was me and you. And there's no answer to that, by the way.
No, of course not.
There really isn't. So I think demonstrations are extremely difficult to police, and all my sympathy with them, because a crowd is so, you just don't know what it's going to do.
It's unpredictable. Yeah.
It's unbelievable what they do. And if you talk to them rationally afterwards, they wouldn't remember half of it. I swear to God, they wouldn't.
Because they get carried away with the.
They do get carried away.
Yeah.
You see it at football crowds. I remember once going to Chelsea, and there was a way down to the underground station, and people were running down there on the SBG, and this girl, probably early 20s, she got trapped against a stand yard. Luckily, there was a PC there with me called the Animal, because he was about 20 stone and huge, and he literally pulled a cork out of a bottle. Now, that crowd didn't mean to do that.
No.
No question. And I'm not saying she wouldn't have got free anyway, but I was glad the old Animal was there.
Yeah, potentially.
Oh, like, cork out of a bottle. Boom, she came. Oh, God. And that's, I don't know, crowds, people, academics in particular, write about crowds as if you should do this and that.
You can't judge them. You can't predict what they're going to do.
I honestly, Paul, yes, of course you can police it. Yes, of course. But when a crowd is very unpredictable and it's very, very difficult, that's all I say.
So you finish on the DPG. SPG, sorry.
Which got changed to TSG.
TSG, yeah, and they've still got the TSG.
Yes, we don't like to use the word special. It's elitist, you see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that why they changed it?
I think so. I don't know.
And it was a political. I mean,
I think
there were some political issues around the SPG, and you know, views around the sus laws and stop and search. And
what is a sus law?
Well, what is it? Come on, then.
Suspected person.
Alan, what is a sus?
It's a suspected person loitering with intent to commit an arrestable offence. It was from 1824.
After the Napoleonic Wars.
Thank you. 1824.
And it was to deal with the Vagrancy Act and all that, all to deal with soldiers. Begging soldiers coming back from the Napoleonic Wars.
So
it was an antiquated piece of legislation, but used sometimes to good effect, sometimes to bad effect.
Well, people go associate with the SPG. I'm not sure that's fair. But then anything associated with the SPG was invariably not fair. And I'll tell you why. Because for the benefit of the doubt, you're not getting it to the police, and you're certainly not getting it to the SPG because they're all depicted as thugs. And that really sometimes upsets me.
Yeah, of course.
Because I served with some really good police officers. Yeah. They weren't thugs.
No.
They really weren't.
No, and they're very loyal, very good, and consummate police officers.
But always in situations that will be conflict.
Well, and you need to have your finest army behind you when you're in conflict,
No
because
doubt about it.
we were talking earlier on, when Alex Ferguson chose probably the best football team of all time, irrespective of who you supported, he didn't speak to an HR professional and say, oh, who should I put up front to score goals? He made his choices and built the team around the people that he had there. And that is, rightly or wrongly, there are elements of the police service that should still have that, and the reason they don't is because somebody got overlooked who was most offended, and the reason they're offended because they probably weren't capable of undertaking that role in the first place.
Yeah, look, you're right.
Controversial.
You need them. See, my daughter's been all these years. She does schools liaison.
Yeah,
and she's very good.
Commendable. We need people in schools. We need communities.
She won an award.
She did.
But that's what she's good at.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. But actually, what she is a home beat officer in school.
Yeah.
Now, I learned, again for this Lou Holness, don't disparage home beat officers as lazy, so use them. And somehow we've lost that.
Yeah.
And it's obvious that you have to respond. You have to respond to emergencies, okay? So what's the first ones that go when you're overwhelmed? Home beats.
Yeah, but the issue is, and I know that you'll agree, community policing is the heart of all policing.
Of course it is.
It doesn't matter what crime takes place. It takes place in the community. Whether that's an online, which is now the favourite, a community started in the community. And for me, two things. 1994, when we lost the housing allowance and police houses, they used to build police houses in areas that council estates, and they needed extra, and that's where the community neighbourhood policing started, because the local kids would have been taught some respect, and they would have understood.
They still talk. Well, I live in Greenhive, which is just out. It's on Kent, just outside, and they had their village tea, and the village policeman played. The older people still talk. He was a great player, you know. How much did he find out in the bar after? You tell me.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite a lot. And the thing is, I always remember being at Southwark as a Chief Supt, and the MP was Simon Hughes, Liberal Democrat.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't agree with much of his politics, but he was a really decent man. Do you know what? If you invited him to a retirement do, he was there. He was there. And he said to me one day, the problem you have, he said, is as if you're in your castle and you venture out to deal with things. And thus you're in danger of becoming an army of occupation. He said that to me in 1990. I remember saying to him, yes, Simon, but every time I stick my head above the wall, you throw rocks in it.
Yeah.
But he was right, and you was right, and what has happened. And I'm not saying why it's happened, but what we got now is what? We got various castles around London, etc., where the guys venture out. I don't think that's good.
I don't think it's good.
I don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't know.
No, but I mean, the 1994 was a sort of a pivotal moment, because we went to 24-hour shopping.
Yeah, and I retired then.
You retired in 94, and then you could see the difference it made to policing when you went, Alan. But then when the world went to 24 hours, the police went to 9 to 5.
Yeah, because I think we have got. I think society now thinks you should look after your own more than serve. I'm not knocking the police, but I'm not saying necessarily the police. And so therefore,
yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, well, look. You see it with the National Health, bless them, who I've had nothing but praise for them. But you see them kind of looking after themselves, health and safety of it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it works like that.
No, it doesn't, and it's interesting because we've built more teams in the Premiership within the police service, and every part of that service has a remit, and it's quite frustrating when it's, well, that's not my job, that's somebody else's job, and then all of a sudden it doesn't actually pay provide the service that the public want or deserve.
No,
And
it's.
I feel for.
I think it's difficult. I do feel for them. Listen, I wouldn't want to be a response officer.
No,
I really wouldn't.
get a complaint every 30 seconds. And well, what about this new? We'll come back to your service, but what about this new Met line around? They want you to phone up if you think that someone's got a bad apple, and well, that's only going to go one way, isn't it? Every time PC Evershed arrests somebody and is successful in his particular community, the communities. Some communities will gang up and will start making spurious complaints, and then you'll have an inappropriate joke on your phone. And when professional standards or DPS or whatever it is in your part of the world, they'll seize your phone, and next thing you know, you're getting the sack because you've got a joke that somebody else has sent to you.
Well, the thing is, you see, if you investigate complaints against police officers anyway, if you can't prove what you think is right, the temptation is to go and see if the guy booked his car out properly.
Yeah.
In other words, you go for the minor things because you can't get the major. And the danger of that is, and it's there, you lose your workforce. Let me tell you something. When I got made sergeant, a very old sergeant now, I'm 25, 26, he said, son, you're in charge of these men now. You've got to trust them. They'll let you down. If you don't trust them, they'll do you down.
Yeah.
Now, what he meant was, you've got to trust them, they'll let you down. They're not doing it personally. In other words, they'll make mistakes.
Yeah.
You've got to forgive them, because if you don't, they'll go through the motions. Now, I think that could easily happen in the police service, if it hasn't already happened. I'll just go through the motions because nobody's going to support me and let me make mistakes. Listen, Paul, in my office, I had a quote from President Teddy Roosevelt, 1900 early, I think, who was actually deputy sheriff. So we know his heart's in the right place.
Right.
And I had it in my office for years. It said, I'm quoting now, so I've probably got it wrong slightly. He said, it's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out when a strong man stumbles or the doer of deeds could have done better. The glory goes to the man in the arena whose face is marred with dirt, blood and sweat and strives mightily and fails and comes short. And if he succeeds, knows the honour of high achievement. And if he fails daring greatly, unlike those cold and timid souls that know neither victory nor defeat. I had that in my office for years. So I used to come and say, what's Maleary done this, for God's sake? But I wasn't there.
No.
And you make mistakes.
Yeah, and that's life. And the police,
of course it is.
The police reflect society, and society makes mistakes, and there'll be fewer people making mistakes in the police service. And you know, the stuff that happened to Sarah Everard, that person who shall remain nameless, I hope he rots in jail.
Yes, of course.
He deserves everything he gets. I hope he's getting the worst time ever. Hope he gets the opportunity to listen to this and thinks that everybody hates him, because they do. Because what he did to the British police service, he put us back 50 years. But the fact is, we've got a lot of very, very competent people. And I'll be honest with you, I think that the Met hotline is despicable, the fact that they're trying to out people in that way. And because people aren't being paid proper money, again, we're going back to the mid-70s, where a milkman earned more than a PC, you will see an upturn in some form of corruption. Now, that form of corruption could be someone going into a fish and chip shop and expecting a discount on fish and chips. Now, in our day, the fish and chip man was pleased to see you and you'd get a deal anyway.
Well, I think the corruption, you know, I forget who said it. One of the law lords said corruption, and he was talking about police corruption, is like a sausage. It's difficult to describe, but unmistakable when you taste it.
Yeah.
You see, if you're a home big man and you go along the same street and you're offered a cup of tea every now and then, that's not corruption, in my book.
Not in mine either.
But if you go in and demand a breakfast every morning, that becomes corruption.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course it does.
Absolutely.
But PC knows that.
Yeah.
So does the shopkeeper.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to describe.
Yeah.
So where you're going now with that, you're going to where he does nothing wrong. He never has a cup of tea. No, thank you. Which is quite ironic, really, because there are no police canteens anymore.
No, exactly.
However, what he will do, or she, will play it safe. And what he'll do, he will do the very minimum and keep out of trouble.
Yeah.
I've no doubt about that.
And you can't blame them because
No,
they don't get thanked for their graft.
Well,
they get vilified if they do something wrong.
You've got to support them if they make mistakes. And by the way, I believe, and I went to Bramshill College quite a few times, that the best way to be a leader is if it's in you, okay, and make mistakes. So I believe there are 4 things about being a leader. 1, you've got to trust them. B, you should defend them in public.
Yeah.
And chastise them. Chastise?
Chastise, yeah, I know what you mean.
in private. And the third thing is, and this is controversial, I think you should reach for the rule book as a last resort, not a first.
Yeah.
And there's only one thing in leadership you really need. You've got it, it's great. You can't lead from the back. You really can't lead from the back.
No.
You've got to be there. Do you remember the stories of the Duke of Wellington, Waterloo and all that? He used to go in front, and the stories of the soldiers, it can't be that bad, the governor's here, right? And that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it is true.
Yeah.
You don't have to do much. That's what really gets me. I've been on many demonstrations. I did one at Notting Hill where I decided if the floats got to us, but it shouldn't, I'd send them down there, that way. They did. I went to it. This PC, local PC, stepped in the road, excuse me, sir, and moved them the other way. I said, what's that? Cul-de-sac, governor. Now, you and I know if he didn't think I was halfway okay, he'd let that happen.
Yeah, of course he would.
Of course he would.
Yeah, because we've all
of course.
We've all had people where we'd like them to drive into a cul-de-sac.
Of course. But he saved me. And then he said something, I thought that's a bit cheeky. Because before the carnival started, I took him in for a pint. We're both off duty. And he said, it's quite a nice pub. He said, I feel like I'm here. We'd only been there 5 minutes. And it turned out a man and his son had a fight. And he said, hold that for me. And he sorted it out. And I said, nice, friendly, family pub. Right? But after this incident there, do you know what he said to me? It's 1-1 now. And he's right.
Yeah,
of course it is. But if you don't, God, don't blow me on trumpet. If you're not there, and he'll let me make that mistake. I've no,
yeah, of course he would.
Absolutely no doubt about it. And I think that's the danger they're in. If you use that approach that's been used by several high-ranking officers of saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to root this route out, you've lost 90% at least of your workforce.
Yeah.
You have.
Yeah, and the respect of them.
Oh. So, Paul, I will not criticise senior officers. I've been there. I don't know what pressures they're under. I really don't. I honestly don't. But leadership doesn't change, mate.
No.
Not really.
When you were, we get to 1984 and the Police and Criminal Evidence Act comes into place. Pace. So, because you then spend 10 years working with Pace, how was that for you as a 1960s copper?
Well,
the reason I say that is because my dad was in the police service.
Well, all I'm going to say is this. Some of the problems you've got now with some of these groups now, they wouldn't have happened in my day. Because what happened in my day, you presented the evidence to me, the sergeant, and I decided whether there was sufficient evidence to charge or not.
Yeah.
That's it, got a call. Now it goes through everything else. I vividly remember a PC went on the SBG and he's now a tourist guide like me, and he became an inspector and he did Vice a lot. Vice. And he used to finish his evidence by looking me straight in the eye and say, I then made my excuses and left. Good advice.
Yeah.
You see people getting into trouble. But then I could decide whether to charge or not.
Yeah.
So pace to me was being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning for a decision, frankly.
Yeah, it's because I remember having spoken to my dad and his mates and who were CID, and they'd nick someone on a Friday, and if they didn't cough it straight away, they'd be staying in all weekend, and then they'd be dealt with on the Monday morning.
Yeah, you know, you had to have reasons for that, and of course we had what I call a refused charge book, where you put in refuse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if evidence wasn't good enough, I could refuse it as a sergeant.
I didn't know that.
And release it.
Wow.
Well, that all changed. I'm not saying it's for the better or not. I just know there's a different era.
Yeah.
And you have to go with that, and they have to live with that. And I also think, being controversial, the country has gone liberal. No comment whether it's a good or bad thing. It has. So you've been at school, you've been taught liberal values all the way. Great. Now you're a police officer, and you say no.
Yeah.
That's difficult for you because you've been taught to challenge everything.
Yeah.
Now you're the arbiter. You make decisions, and it's not so easy in my day. It's more black and white in my day,
Yeah.
right or wrong.
And the other thing that I about what you've just said, if Mr. Smith thought it was acceptable to urinate in a shop doorway, when they become PC Smith 6 weeks later, and they still think it's acceptable, then we see a degeneration of our society around the way that we do our policing style. And we still police by consent, and we still, to a certain degree, have the Peelian principles, but,
I'm a conservative, not in a political way. I believe in conserving things.
Yeah.
And doing things slowly when you change. A liberal tends to want it done quicker. I'm not saying they're wrong, by the way. I think they are, but I'm not.
No.
And that is the way it is. And sooner or later, it's very difficult to draw lines if you're very liberal.
Yeah.
And if you're a police officer, it's much more difficult.
Yeah.
Because where's your line going to draw?
What's acceptable, what's not acceptable?
Especially if you're Chief Superintendent.
Yeah. So you've gone through your service, you've done the SPG. You end up at Southwark.
Oh, yes, wonderful. Wonderful place.
Different world.
Fantastic. It was south, people don't know, it's just south of the river. It's the first Roman suburb because it was just south of London Bridge.
Right.
And actually, the Roman road went from London Bridge straight past the Nick onto A2 towards Dover, A3 Chichester.
Right.
And that's where Southwark Nick was. Very, very working class. Getting a bit gentrified now.
Salt the earth people.
Yes, definitely. And it was, as a borough, it was staunchly Labour, except my little bit, which was Liberal Democrat. Very working class. And actually, any policeman will tell you, it's easier to police working class areas than upper class areas.
Yes, yeah, absolutely right. I've worked in some great places in Essex, and the ones with the money were the more difficult, simply because they were more demanding, greater expectations, and they thought that we were their private police service.
Absolutely, yeah. I also remember. You see, I'm so old. We used to call a detective superintendent if you had a murder or.
Yeah.
All right. And he would come from area headquarters, a man called Steve Landahue. I knew him from the 60s. He always had brilliantine hair and a starched collar and a waistcoat. He looked like Hercules Poirot without the moustache. And he came to this series of rapes, actually. And I had a public meeting in the police station and said, Steve, you're going to have to speak to them. That's all right, old boy. I will. And I introduced the great man, and he stood there. And any questions, Mr. Landahue? And yes, sir. What are you bleeding doing about it, mate? Which I know I shouldn't swear, but you know what? That is the question.
That's all they want to know.
Yes.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
And he answered it well.
Yeah.
He wasn't. I don't think he was a brilliant detective, but he was very thorough.
Yeah.
And a different world in it. He used to come and drink my scotch, you know.
Really? Well, yeah, scotch in the police station.
And occasionally he'd say to me,
how very dare you?
I've drunk your scotch again. I must take you for lunch. He'd take me to the local pub for lunch. He would, bless him. He'd been long dead now, but it's good, honest
policing.
That's what he was. And by the way, every time we had a murder on my ground in Southwark, which weren't very many, I'd say to you, Detective Superintendent, would you like a local home big man? He never said no.
No, of course.
Of course not.
Eyes and ears.
Definitely. It'll get you the gossip.
What was it like working in the police service? But bear in mind that when you joined, we still had capital punishment. What was that? What was that like? I mean,
I don't think it affected the PC on the beat. Capital punishment. You were vaguely aware of it.
Because Ruth Ellis, 1965, was she? Yeah.
I don't think it affected us really, to be honest with you. And I think the judiciary has become liberalised, and that's fine in many ways. But it makes the job harder because I think it's Peter Rimbaud, I know it was, who said we should be a police service. And he's right, the police are a service. But if they're not an enforcement agent as well, what are they?
What are they? Yeah.
Social workers. I don't think Peter Rimbaud thought that at all. But that's how it's gone.
But you worked with, you must have worked with Marx, Imbert, Paul Condon. Yeah,
that's about it really. Oh no, go back. I was with a man called Not Power when I was a cadet. Because what he used to do, and I forget the name of the first commissioner that came through the ranks. I can't remember his name. But he said, Wing Commander, would you like a job? or General. That's what they did. And of course they were all right because they knew how to handle men and all that.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, the Trenchard scheme.
Yes.
Was fast promotion, like now. That was 1930s because he was an RAF man.
Trenchard House. What's Trenchard House?
That was a section house.
Section house, yeah.
But he was not a wing commander, much above that.
Yeah.
And that's why they had the training schools there, because it was Hendon Airport.
Right.
Airport? It was. That's why. But that didn't really work. When I went to Edgware as a cadet in 1958, there was still a superintendent there.
But you can't imagine that Hendon was an RAF station, can you?
Yeah, definitely was. It's great, isn't it? That's why the museum's still there.
It's bonkers, really.
Yeah, but that's what they did. The driving school was there as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because, I mean, there's some other stuff I'm going to ask you, but driving school, I get this vision of almost like the Passport to Pimlico type thing, the Ealing comedies, where the police vehicle has got a bell on the front. Am I being disrespectful?
No. I went to the driving school as a police cadet. Not to learn to drive, but doing the clerks. But one of the great perks was you went with them for their full day out advanced driving down to Chichester.
Really?
And I went there once, and on the way back, it overheated. And I got the job of walking up to this house and not to get some water. But it's a great privilege for me. And I still think, every time I come to a bend, I try and get the maximum vision. So
I know, I'm the same. You drive to the system.
Yeah, you still do it. Mind you, I wasn't a good driver. So I was what they call a Group C automatics. When I became a station sergeant, I drive cars. I never drove a vehicle till I had 10 years service. I walked everywhere.
Really?
Group C automatics and SPG carriers, that's all I could do. So I don't know. Where were we? Driving school?
Yeah, no, police vehicles that have got bells on the front.
When I tell this story, but it's absolutely true. They posted me as a cadet to this police garage at Hendon, actually. So I get on this griddled traffic patrol. They don't want me.
No.
Of course not, I understand that. But I was very good at two things. I kept quiet, and B, I could beat them at table tennis. And that makes a difference. I know it's silly, but it makes a difference. And I learned the best lesson ever is we stopped a guy for speed. And in those days, you had a calibrated extra speedometer, and you followed him for I think it was 0.3 of 1, might be 2, I can't remember now. And he said, "Come with me, son." And poor guy, 42 miles an hour, 39 an hour. Come back, he said, "Did you hear what he said to me?" He said, "Thank you." Got it, he said. He said thank you because he knows he's an idiot. He knows he's going to get points in his licence. He knows he should have spotted us. So don't go in hard, son. Don't embarrass him. Don't say who you think you are, Sterling Moss or Lewis Hamilton. going soft anywhere. If you meet resistance, if you're going too hard to meet resistance, you've either got to back off or say something you may regret.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know what he meant then. I did later.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of any situation, not just the police, anything. Why go in hard?
Yeah.
You know, because you can go hard. Because he said, you're wearing the uniform, you're going to win. And by the way, I'm very old-fashioned, because that system where you reported the guy, not a ticket, and it went to the chief inspector who decided whether there was enough evidence, gave you, the motorist, your day in court. And by the way, that made you innocent till I prove you're guilty.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Yeah.
Now, I know you probably couldn't do it now, okay, because it wouldn't get the money in. Right? But now, as a motorist, you're guilty. And
you are.
And you're proving it. And that is reversal. Total reversal of what I believe in. I believe you should be innocent to prove guilty of anything.
Absolutely.
And if any kind of police officer going to court, and don't seem as a chief superintendent never went to court, by the way, because I did a lot. I lost some, which I thought I should win.
Yeah.
But you shrug, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because either I haven't presented it well enough, because we present our own cases, you know.
Yeah.
Or there's some other reason. And you win some, you lose some. Now, you're guilty.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
Presume guilt before you've even got that.
You shouldn't do that.
And then you, as an innocent person, you've got to fight like mad to try and...
Right.
No, it's not right.
And they've done that, and they've done it for convenience, because otherwise you need more courts, etc., etc.
Well,
and by the way, you wouldn't get the money in.
And we've got fewer courts. And at the moment, we've got police cells being used again for prisoners, but we've got fewer police stations to keep them in. So what happens then? And what all that will mean is there'll be few people arrested because they haven't got space to take the home off. You know,
we've done it before, haven't we?
I earned a fortune.
I remember I was a chief. Have you ever done it? Have you ever been in a prison and on duty? Because you have. Of course you have. I have. I was in charge of Wandsworth when the strike was on, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
And I also, as a station sergeant at Caddo, where we had Pentonville prison, and what's the woman's
Holloway.
Prison? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've done 2 ID parades in Pentonville, that wasn't too bad, and one in Holloway, and that was awful. Have you ever done an ID parade in a woman's prison? Done.
I took a prisoner. I was a young PC, so this is December 87, Christmas Eve, December 87. And a woman has been remanded in custody at Braintree Police Station. And I'm the junior PC, so I jump in the car with John, the civvy driver, and we escort this woman to Holloway. We get there in time because there was a cut-off point that you had to be there. And as I walk in, it's like, here he is, here's my Christmas present. Oh, my life.
Yeah.
And my backside was going half crown sixpence because it's just, honestly, it was so...
I know, it's hostile.
It is hostile. And I'd worked in places, building in places which was predominantly women, and it was very fruity, let's put it that way, some of the behaviours, but this was just a different level.
I know, it's awful. Just
not a nice place.
No, Pentonville was easier.
Yeah. When you were... You go onto the DPG, and for those who don't know, the DPG is Diplomatic Protection Group.
Yeah. Basically, they're responsible. They're formed in 1974.
Right.
I think 74, about that time. They were charged with protecting all the embassies, plus Downing Street. They're still there.
Yep.
I can't remember if it was Foreign Secretary, but it was definitely Downing Street. And the idea was that they'd all be armed and you would try and do it properly, professionally. 2 hours on and off.
Yep.
You had cars patrolling to make sure those that didn't have arms. Now, to me...
And they're red vehicles now,
they're the red vehicles. But when I was a PC, I did guard duty at the Israeli ambassador's house at St John's Wood. He'd be there for hours.
Yeah. Unarmed
as well. So it wasn't very professional. It's a lot more professional.
Yeah.
And I jokingly say in charge it was a tough job because I had to go to cocktail parties all over London, every embassy.
Hell.
Drink for England. Dreadful.
What a life.
Wasn't easy. You'll
have me in tears in a minute, you know that.
I could do, especially the Irish.
Yeah, I like the Irish Embassy. Those.
Well, the Irish Embassy was unique in the fact it was always in March, wasn't it, near St Patrick's Day? But what was on as well was the horse racing at
Cheltenham.
So when you went in there was priests of both denominations, by the way, Church of Ireland, and there were jockeys and trainers.
And as much Guinness as you could get down your neck.
I don't like Guinness, thank God. But yeah.
And Jameson's.
And I did that. And there's another thing. I don't know what they do now, and I don't know what they can do. But when I went to these embassy dues, which, by the way, it's not that easy to do, because what happens, you go there and you're with the police inspector and you tend to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And I had to make a real effort to go and talk to people. So this is who I am.
Yeah.
Because it's much more comfortable with your own, isn't it? But I did that, and I gave him my business card, because if you're ambassador for Chile, this happened actually. He had a problem, nothing to do with the embassies or anything like that. He had a problem, a family problem, not serious, but it was a bit of a problem.
Right.
So he rings me, and I get onto you, the CID at Kensington.
Yeah.
And you go and deal with it, okay? Now, if he doesn't know me, he's going to put a report to the Foreign Secretary. He's going to send it to the Home Secretary. He's going to send it to the Commissioner. He's going to send it to me.
Right.
Phone call. Paul, get your ass down there. Blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
I did that a lot, and I thought it was important. And I don't know whether it was or not, but I mean...
But they become a merry-go-round, don't they? Because you see the same people. And actually, it is a great network. If people use that as part of their networking, it's a great networking point, because you meet everyone from across the world. You know, you only have to look
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
I went to the Turkish embassy once where somebody had thrown a stone through the window. And next door was Trinidad and Tobago. And a stone went through his window. So I went to see the ambassador. He'd been on Lancaster's in World War II.
No way.
Oh, yes, he had. And I always remember him. I explained what happened. He said, so in cricketing terms, he said, they were bowling wides, were they? He did, bless him. It's lovely, isn't it, though?
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I also... I organised curry evenings at the headquarters. Not very often, 3 or 4 times a year. Invite all the policemen. Because you don't realise there are police officers posted to many embassies.
Oh, yeah, there are. Yeah, absolutely.
So the only thing is, you're an Aussie, you got to bring some beer, all right?
Yeah.
You're a German, bring some wine.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
And
it works.
Oh, network, it's fantastic.
It's still, I mean,
I hope it does.
It does. The foreign missions in London, I mean, they're still very tight, and hopefully some of them will be listening to this, because there's some great people and great characters, and, you know, that they have a brilliant time whilst they're in London.
Well, it's for an American embassy, which of course I dealt with a lot.
In Grosvenor Square.
Yeah. You know, you meet some really good people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's I think they're number one posting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I got involved there as well before. I was a chief inspector. It was the Queen Mother's birthday, 1981, I think. And all the governors went to Leicester Square and they put me in charge of this small demonstration outside the embassy. Dear God, it was Iranians trying to get in.
Right.
And I go back to the wall. See, should never really be too near the front, but I went back to the wall because behind me, I know what's behind me. I'm not going to say it on air.
I know what's behind you, yeah, as well. They're only going to get so far.
So anyway, we arrested well over 50. None of them had an ID, not a single ID on them. So it's predestined.
Yeah.
Okay. In those days, it must have been pre-placed because I got the job of presenting the cases with a solicitor from the yard. My job really was going to say, day, time, place, I was in charge of demonstrating, boom, over to you, piece of the and I did all of those. And, you know, I won't tell you the stories because I couldn't do it on air, but I got to know the barrister who represented all of those because by chance, I'm having lunch in a pub near Highbury Corner, and he bumped into me by chance. And he said to me, Mr. Evershed, I will not be underhand with you. I really won't. And you know what? He wasn't. He's doing his job, isn't he?
Yeah, of course he is.
And it was a great experience, and I swear to God, some of those Iranians look remarkably like English people, whatever that is, but they had no ID, so they went back to Iran.
Yeah, because we were now in the days of the Ayatollah and
yes, because
and the revolution, I suppose.
Well, yes, we were.
Shah of Persia.
Well, yeah.
Shah of Iran.
Yeah.
Messy old business, then.
They're fantastic. Listen, as a people, I think they're great. Persian Empire didn't have blacks.
No.
And they're not Arab. They're not Arabic. They're Iranian. They're Persian.
Yeah. And very proud of it.
Oh, why shouldn't they be?
Yeah.
And
were you in the job when the Iranian embassy siege took place then?
Yeah, I was.
Were you in the DPG then, or
no, I wasn't. I was at West End Central, and because I was shield trained, whatever they call it. They sent to the training thing where they throw bricks at you and petrol bombs.
How very dare they?
Oh, and as the governor, you've got to go first, don't you? Anyway, we're down there, and the call came up to tell us about that. So my lot from West End Central, we were not first there, but the cordons, because we're unarmed, Paul.
Yeah, of course.
And then it said, I should have done my bit. I thought, following Sunday, they said, go down there again. They broke in again. That's when they broke in. And you think...
Trevor Locke, he was the PC though, wasn't
he? I tell you what, he was fantastic. Of course he was. But I'm not sure, on reflection, we should have used him as much as we did to give talks about his experience. I'm not sure. Maybe it was helpful.
I think he still does it, actually.
I don't know, but But I remember it vividly, watching it. Dear God. And you think... See, what I've been very lucky is when I was at the Balcon Street siege, I was a relieving inspector, relieving all the others. So when they came out, I was there again by chance.
Yeah.
Same thing happened at that siege, Iranian siege. Sheer chance. So you're there. As I often say to people, the police are not part of things, but they're the closest to anybody else. They're there on the outskirts watching it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Demonstrations, they're there. You know, the king coronation, they're there. And you see things. Oh,
did you see? Could you actually line of sight of the Iranian embassy, or were you within?
I saw all the smoke going, mate. And everything, yeah. But of course you don't see it exactly.
No, of course you don't. We probably got better view on the television, to be fair.
Probably.
I remember the actual embassy siege.
I have been. Are you lucky or unlucky to be involved in those things? I don't know, mate. All I know is
time and place. I mean, and the thing is, if you're that way inclined and you're involved in certain things, I think that work follows busy people. If you keep yourself busy, then you'll always be in the thick of it. But I do know that you were involved, and if you don't want to talk about it, I understand, but the Marchioness.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, that I think was the worst. I think that was the worst I've ever been to. Because I remember going to where she'd sunk with Tony Speed. And I remember saying to him, this is no crime scene I've ever seen. There's nothing to see.
It's all underwater.
Yeah, it was awful. And he said something to me there. He said, Alan, I want you to stay here until 6 a.m. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, Paul. I can't remember that. Because these policemen, and who's other people, try and they've seen horrendous things, and they deserve a senior officer that's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's leadership, mate.
I know.
And if I hadn't have been there, they wouldn't have had that, would they? You know what I mean?
So talk me through that then, Alan. You're at home or you're...
I was at home. I was home. Phone went, sorry to bother you, sir. They always say sorry to bother you. Anyway, and I went there, because Southwark was a riparian division. The River Thames was the boundary.
Yeah.
And it happened right on our side of the river. And it was it did, by Cannon Street Railway Bridge. It was there. So I went down and I remember...
Did you get taken there or were you...
No, what happened is I went to my office, because uniform wear, and I called the night duty CID, and that's how desperate I was. And you call them in, and I remember saying to, actually, two DCs, I said, whatever, I want you to go to the Marchioness, to the Bow Bells, the barge. Brattle was the captain. I said, "I know it's not legal. I mean, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's an indication whether you've been drinking or not."
Yeah.
And that was the end of that part of it. And then, but quite recently, at the Tower of London, I bumped into one of those DCs.
No way.
Yeah, and he said she made no other decision. That was the best you made.
So you've directed them to go and breathalyse.
Yeah, I said, "Did you do it then?" He said, "No." I said, "What?" He said, "No, we went to Limehouse," he said, "but we didn't know where it was. So we called the night duty CIF for Limehouse and they did it for us. And it was negative."
Right.
It's not legal. All right, we know.
No, but it
gives an indication. And I think that was...
So you get your uniform on.
Yeah. Go down to the office. Realise it's really big. It's got to be Scotland Yard, the control centre. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go there. There's 3 other chief lieutenants there, and then Tony Speed came in his own car, by the way.
Tony Speed's commander?
Yeah, no, well, I think it was a DAC, actually.
Right.
Deputy Assistant. Yeah, and he came in his own car.
Right.
In uniform. That impressed me, I remember thinking.
Yeah.
You know, he hasn't got waiting a chauffeur up. I mean, I went in my own car, of course, to Summit, and then he drove me there. And I have enormous respect for him.
How do you seal that off as a crime scene?
You can't, can you?
No.
And he did. And the other, is it funny? It's not funny. There's nothing funny about it. But he said we come back at 6 a.m. to the yard. So I go there at 6 o'clock. And at 5 past, Margaret Thatcher comes in.
Really?
With Dennis. And who's the bloke does the railway programmes? Portillo.
Michael Portillo, yeah.
So I did the decent thing. I slid my 6'2" as deep as I could in my seat. But her eyes came straight to me. And they're very blue. And what is your role? I said, "I'm coordinating the search for survivors." Good, she says, survivors. I remember him saying that. She knew.
Yeah.
We all knew survivors. And then I was impressed with her because she God. And that was her. She came out. There's another thing, leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, she's there. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, maybe she's there. She should do. No question.
Were you involved in it after that, or was that your?
No, the Marchioness. Yeah, well,
I suppose once it's become a crime scene, you've then got your divers. You've then got to recover the vehicle,
you've got to
the
give it to the
vessel.
public as well.
Yeah,
the Gorpers. I was helped by the City of London Police, just the other side of the river. Bless their hearts.
Yeah,
they came. The chief lieutenant I knew said, he rang me. "Alan, what can I do?" I said, "Well, he said about 20 PCs, City Police." I always like City Police because they're always 6 foot. They always were over 6 foot.
Yeah.
And they look imposing.
And they used to be able to swim as well. So that was part of the you could join if you could swim because you had the Thames to look after.
Well, I remember when I went to training school and I couldn't believe as a cadet, as a 40p cadet set, about at least a dozen couldn't swim.
No.
Because I was taught to swim at the primary school in a cold water open air pool. I just thought everybody was.
Yeah.
I honestly did.
Yeah, I know. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. Yeah, but the Marchioness was the one you couldn't enjoy anything about that, mate.
No.
You really...
No, there's a lot of high profile, there's still a lot of talk about it, the removed hands, and there was all sorts of things that went on. But no, it's quite... And so you come through to 94.
Yeah, retired.
34 years. That included your cadet service?
No, I did 2 years. 36 if you include that.
Really?
Yep. And then what am I going to do? Well, I didn't want to do security.
No.
I've done it, okay? I wanted to be free, and I loved history, so I trained to be a tourist guide, blue badge tourist guide, and that's what I've done ever since. Driver guiding first, and now just walks. I'm too old. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
And you're good at it.
I like it.
You are good at it. I've experienced your tours.
Well, I think I'm above average. That's what
you are above average, but you Jack the Rippers and things like that. Absolutely brilliant. And of course, your involvement at the Tower of London.
Yeah, it's look. Once again, it doesn't feel like work, mate.
No,
it really doesn't feel like work.
I'm there tonight. I mean, it's
I know. Well, bless your heart.
It's a lovely place.
Oh,
you can't honestly. You cannot quantify.
No, you can't.
if bear in mind what we do up there and our freedom in there, if you like, for want of a better word, because of our friendships with the beefeaters and the authorities there, it's second to none. Honestly, I feel privileged. When I go in there, it's such a place. And when you walk through the street at the end of the night and you've had a couple of beers or whatever, and you're walking down the streets where every king and queen of England have been since 1066, plus all the people that have lost their lives, it's just a different. The crays have been kept there. It was the bank, where they made the money. It was, if people don't realise, but had it not been for the fact that they moved to Greenwich, it would have been Tower meantime. It would have been Greenwich meantime. There's all those different things.
Greenwich meantime I love because, I can't say it on air. I'll tell you after.
Yeah, that's fine.
But Greenwich, do you know the contest, such it was for GMT, was Greenwich or Paris.
Is that right? I didn't realise that.
So it's GMT or PMT, and they went, And they went for GMT.
GMT.
and that's because of the Royal Connections, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Observatory, and everything. Yeah, a good decision.
Royal Observatory.
Did you know they still drop that ball at 1 o'clock as the ship goes? At 1 o'clock. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's daft, isn't it, now? They do.
Yeah, but
so you're coming up, you're saying up and saying, oh, God, blimey, it's 1 o'clock, sort of thing. I think.
But your tour guiding, you've met some thoroughly interesting people.
Well, we have, because somehow got involved in the Secret Service at the American Embassy and driving presidents when they came over, because I do it with Gary.
Yeah.
But Gary does the VIPs. I like to be in the backup car because, frankly, the VIP's not much fun compared with
the support staff.
Only because he or she's saving the world. Seriously, they think they're next speech, aren't they?
Yeah, of
course. Whereas Secret Service are fun.
They are fun. Yeah, they are.
They are fun, and they get out and they do their job, don't they?
Yeah, they do a great job, and we've got some really good friends.
Oh, I think.
But you've met Clinton.
I met Bill Clinton. Do you know what he does? No, I won't say that. But he's very good. He was in his private jet going back to the States. I think it was Luton Airport. It might have been Stansted. I really can't remember now. And he gets in there, and I'm with another driver. And we're ready to go. And Secret Service goes, would you like your photograph taken with the president? And both said, well, he said, no, he'll come. And he came out, and he made me and this guy feel with you. People say that about him, it's true. He makes you feel the most important person.
Yeah, you're the only one.
And I said to the Secret Service, he likes people. Clearly he does, he said. But the thing is, if you like people like he does, he likes to be liked. Very shrewd observation. It's true.
Yeah, it is, like absolutely.
That. So, yeah, Jimmy Carter.
Is he still going, Jimmy Carter?
Well, he was.
He's late 90s now.
Well, they loved him, the Secret Service, because he turned up, he said, I'll be at 9 o'clock, he'll be there. And Bill Clinton wasn't quite like that, a bit like that. And he was a bit more unreliable. And I think to myself, I was a Group C automatics.
I know. And now you're driving presidents around. It's fascinating. I mean, I know that
it's fun.
Yeah, it is.
But you have to do it. You have to in the backup car, not let anybody get in between you.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's not that easy sometimes.
No.
But I liked it. But my best one, there was a guy who used to be, it wasn't in the police, it was a Geordie. I think he was one of the best drivers I've ever come across. He used to be at the back because he had the sort of, paperwork's not the right word these days, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when we were on a convoy, he would come up alongside you, get around about, get across there and let you through. And just bring the best things. We went to, it was a National Trust place about 40 miles from Oxford when Mr. Clinton went there. And he was staying there. And we're driving through this countryside with pouring rain. Oh, dear God, what am I doing this for, Maurice? It's ridiculous. And when we get there, they laid on food for us and the Secret Service. And it consisted of quiches and salads and all lovely, lovely food, healthy. So this other driver said, Alan, he said, going through that village about 10 miles, I saw a fish and chip shop open. I said, I don't believe you. You couldn't have done. He said, how could you? I said, we were going at 50 miles an hour. It was pouring with rain. I'm telling you. So I said, get some money for me and you and the other driver. I know so it's probably about 15 quid. I can't remember. Fish and chips. Secret Service, they're a bit envious because fish and chips. And I got those memories with nothing to do with the job, really, are
No.
they? But they're
But they can't be taken away, are they?
Oh, no. And the Secret Service, I won't hear a word said against them. If you want to see Secret Service at work, watch, it's a film with Shirley MacLaine and Nicolas Cage. I forget what it's called, quite low budget.
Mm.
And she was the president's wife and he died in office.
Right.
And Cage is the head of the Secret Service. And his career is going nowhere, is it? He wants to get away. And she don't want him to go. She's a cantankerous so. If you watch it, it's the most realistic thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, when the Secret Service guys in the backup car are going and they got all the music on, singing, that's what it's like.
Yeah.
I don't want to give it away, but
No, I'll watch that.
I'll watch it. I forget what it's called now. It's Shirley MacLaine. It was fairly low budget, but there's a lovely scene in there where she gets kidnapped and he rescues her. You know.
Because
and this is a woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
What does she say when he gets there? Saves her. You know I'm going to say, what kept you?
Yeah, what kept you? What took you so long?
It's wonderful. And because she's got a real soft spot for him. You know that?
Yeah.
You know. No, I don't mean romantically. She
liked him.
Yeah, she liked him. And he liked her, really. What kept you? What? And I thought, that's very sexist of me, isn't it? But
yeah, no, I get it.
You know, it was a good scene. And it's a very good film about what it's really like. I mean, The Bodyguard's good. But depicting life as a bodyguard, this one, in my opinion, is
and
better.
they're good guys and girls, and they work hard at what they do, especially when the president comes to town. I remember when Obama was here and they were on the go all the time. You know, there was no sleep then. And of course, your other love is Winston Churchill. You're a massive Winston Churchill.
Well, I was at his funeral.
Yeah, I suppose you were.
Yeah, I was on his funeral, and
January 1965.
65. Was it February or November? It was very cold and wet. I was night duty, so I didn't really see much. But I was amazed. You're there quite near the Abbey as they're coming over Lambeth Bridge. And it's not as big as the Queen's funeral, okay?
No, of course.
But it was huge.
But it was a state funeral for a commoner.
Yeah, it was huge.
First time since Nelson, I think.
Nelson or Wellington.
Wasn't it Wellington?
Wellington or Nelson, or both maybe. Don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's an honour, and it was...
Because the Queen attended, which was an unusual...
It was... He was... Look, I don't care what they say. And now they do things for his statue and all that sort of thing.
That's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Well...
That's our history.
I know it's our history.
And we can't cancel everything that's gone on in life.
You know, I think as well, if you're very liberal, you tend to apologise for past sins. And actually, what you're saying is, you must suffer for the sins of your father. And that don't work.
No.
Not really.
No, of course
nobody thinks. My grandsons don't think they should suffer because of me. And it's just...
No, exactly.
It doesn't work.
No, exactly.
And he was a great man, wasn't he? He was a great man. I mean, I go to Chartwell. I used to go to Chartwell. Have you ever been there? I've
never, ever been there.
It's a lovely country house. It's not a palace, but paintings are there. And there's a big goldfish pond there. And there's a seat there, which is a replica of what he used to have. And you can see the great man used to feed his goldfish. And I always think to myself, do you know what? And a voice would say, Winston, time for lunch. See? And he would say, I'm trying to save the world here. He said, do you want your lunch or not? Because his wife would want him for lunch. And any sensible man would do what? Go for lunch.
Yeah. Not him.
And there they are, goldfish. And they still have a, is it a marmalade cat? They call it marmalade cats? I can't remember. Gingery thing.
Yeah.
They still got one because he had one. So every time one dies, get another one because he had one. And
what a bloke.
It's not grand. But, you know, there was a book by Roy Jenkins,
Yeah.
who was his opponent for years in Parliament.
Yeah.
He wrote a biography of him about 20 years ago. And when I started it, I thought, I don't like this man.
Yeah.
And I finished up admiring him. Because, listen, words still matter. If you an orator, you can get people.
Yes, absolutely.
What did he say? I read his biography and he said he was captured by the Boers. He said, and I escaped. But I had no uniform. And they recaptured me. Because I had no uniform, they could have shot me. I'm rather glad they didn't. I mean, who would think like that? It's fantastic, isn't it? The only politicians I know that's got that charisma is a certain Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
But he lies, so he's out.
Yeah. He's silly, isn't he? Because he would have been, if he hadn't lied, he'd have been the Prime Minister for the people.
No, I don't think so, mate. I think they were going to get him anyway.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure. Look at the way they're treating him now. I don't want to get political, but...
He's charging £250,000 a throw for speeches.
Of course he is. Have you not said, when he was mayor of London, he used to cycle through the parks and that. And my daughter said he would invariably say, any policeman, good morning, good afternoon.
Oh, I know. I met him at Parliament. What a bloke. He came up, was with a friend of mine, Rob Scott. And Rob introduced me. This is my friend Paul. He was, governor in Essex Police. And it was just after the referendum.
Oh, yeah.
And he stood and spoke to us. He was lovely.
Yeah. One of the gates of Downing Street told me this lovely story about he came in with his bicycle. Now, there was an incident with an MP.
Oh, yeah.
But this bicycle comes up with a pedestrian. He said, do you mind if I take my bicycle in? They said, no, of course not. And he goes, I'm just going to see whoever the chancellor was, see if I can get you a pay rise, chaps. It's nonsense.
Yeah. But
do we like that?
It was engaging.
Of course it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think he had something. I think they would have brought him down anyway, personally.
Yeah, I think he'd have done it by his own hand at some point.
Well, they would have gone to get him.
Yeah.
You see?
And, of course, your other one is Lewis Carroll. I mean, your favourite quotes come from Lewis Carroll.
Well, you know what? I'm living in this age, and I know that what I disagree with is...
Yeah, Lewis Carroll.
Lewis Carroll, well, if you do despair about the age you're in, this is Lewis Carroll. I think it was the Mad Hatter who said to her, the truth is what I say it is, no more and no less. And then the king later on said to her, might be the queen, it's sentence first, trial second.
Yeah.
And she said, stuff and nonsense, and went through the rabbit hole, which I take to mean the truth will out.
Yeah.
But if you don't recognise those two things going on now, and they are,
yeah, absolutely.
social media or something, and that's what I think about Boris. What they're doing is well-meaning, but it don't sit right with me. It shouldn't sit right with anyone. It shouldn't sit right if you're a far left, because they've got a committee of 7 people, I think. 5 have spoken out publicly against him. They changed the rules from lying to unintentionally lying. And you think, what's the value of that? Because when they find him guilty, which they must do, what value is that in it? Honestly. Because anybody looking at it saying, that's McCarthyism, if you remember him.
Yeah.
It's a kangaroo court. That's the witch to Salem again. That's what that is.
Yeah.
So I don't understand it, Paul. I don't understand why they would do that.
No, it should. Everyone's entitled to fair trial, fair hearing.
Of course they are.
And
we know that, don't we?
Well,
look, I did complaints in the police, and I've been on discipline boards with people. And I'll tell you that honestly, if at the end of it they feel they've had it fair, it's a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
Because if they feel it's unfair, where do they go back to? Their workforce say, dear God. And they all think, dear God.
Yeah.
And you have to be seen to be fair.
Yeah.
Don't look for the car that's not been booked out. That's not part of the complaint. And there's a danger of doing that. But
But now it's, absolutely.
And I will not criticise, because I don't want to be like the critic who doesn't count. They're in the arena.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly right. Happy days, mate.
Sometimes I think.
Yeah, but that's how it rolls.
Let's have the Chief Constable Dorney Lemon again. That's who we want from Kent.
That's who we want. Yeah. What was his name? Dorney
Lemon.
Dorney Lemon.
Isn't that way? He died in the last 10 years, over 90. He was.
Really?
So I met somebody at the tower one night, and he told me he's still alive. He also told me he went to see an ex-detective, I forget where it rank, in Essex, this guy. And he said, as I was leaving, he was a spry old boy, TJF, Sarge.
TJF.
Don't you dare. Don't say a word.
No, I'm not going to. Well, on that note,
go.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or to correct?
No, I don't think so. I trust you to edit it accordingly. So,
mate, I'm not. There's not a lot I need to edit. So,
you don't want to be embarrassed by it.
You're not.
It was a lovely. It was a look.
I hope you enjoyed the experience.
I enjoyed the experience. I even enjoyed this. I enjoyed the police because I knew nothing about it, and yet it turned out to be something I was quite good at. I didn't know that. Except being a detective, I wasn't a good detective.
It wasn't made for everyone.
No, I wasn't very good at that, and I know I wasn't. It makes me. I can smile at it because especially the ice cream.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
And that happened, and the area car. Well, I've told you about my posting to the area car. My last story. Have I told you about? Well, I got posted with about 6 months service and night duty, and I go for tea, and a PC come up to me. My number was 220. His was 330, and he said, "Make the most of it. You're Scottish." He said, "You're not beyond tomorrow night." So what is that? He said, "You're on probation. You shouldn't be on it." They made a mistake. I said, "Well, I'm sorry about that." So I went out to the car, get in, and I said to the driver, whose name was Chippy Carpenter. They all were Chippy.
Yeah.
He'd been a member of the Caterpillar Club. I mean, he'd been blown out of a Lancaster and rescued from the North Sea.
Really?
And he's driving this thing. He wasn't 5'8", Paul. He had a cushion to sit on. But he'd been blown out of a Lancaster.
Oh, my Lord.
So I tell him this story. He looked at me and said, "Well, son, I'll tell you now. You didn't get no complaints from me." He said, "You answer that radio. I'll drive us. If there's any writing to do, you do the writing. I'll help you with the report. If there's any arrest to do, you go to court in the morning, I go home to bed, and I'll see you at 10 o'clock the following night. That's it." Instant hero, isn't he?
Yeah.
And we stayed on for 3 weeks. And last night, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're at the top of Albany Street, and it's a long street that goes down to a junction with Euston Road and Marylebone Road. A huge, long street with a one-way street at the end. He said, "I've often wondered if I can get 100 out of it." I don't know if we did, because Jesus. We go down there, and we don't make it. We finish up in the middle of the junction. And I remember thinking then, I think now, this guy been blown out of a Lancaster, and yet, like most men, he hadn't quite grown up, had he?
No.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, it is lovely.
Good man he was. Good man. He taught me how to write reports as well.
Fantastic.
Good man. And you asked me earlier about the bell. We really had one bell on the front, I forget if it was left or right now, I can't remember now. And you rang that thing. And, to be honest, it was easier to get out, wind the window down, and get out and scream abuse to get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
Because nobody could hear it. They were
halcyon days, mate.
Well, there was other things wrong. I mean, I think one thing that wrong definitely was putting us on the beat's great, but telling us idling and gossiping is a discipline offence. I still can't quite work that out.
No.
Because you talk to people, and
the rest falls into place.
Well, you do it, and it will become, "What's your name, officer?" "Paul," you say. And then he calls you Paul, you call him Fred.
Yeah.
And because
next time you see him, you're Fred and Paul.
Well,
again,
he'll give you information, because he's not giving information to the police. He's giving information to Paul.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how human beings rationalise things
but
like that.
they've made it
But
too
maybe, maybe, and I'm not criticising. Maybe they're so short of numbers they've got to prioritise. I don't know.
I think that the informant stuff is around. They're concerned about the corruption element and people getting into bed with them, basically. But
well, yes. Well, look, yeah, okay. I served with a guy once who was a detective sergeant in charge of what we called the dip squad at Oxford Street.
Yeah.
And he got sent back to uniform because one of his DCs met someone on bail.
Oh, wow.
And he comes to me as a station sergeant, driving around the pad there. He said, I don't want to be here, you know. I said, I don't want you either. And he explained it. And it was great. He finished up with uniform chief superintendent. I asked him to go back to CID. He said, no, you kicked me out. I did nothing wrong. He finished up chief superintendent. And he was good. By the way, he was a great footballer as well, which helped.
Oh, yeah.
He
absolutely.
really was a good footballer. And, for God's sake. See, what I worry about, and sport-wise, do you know the Met Police have got 0 or 1 players that are actually policemen?
They've got what?
They've only got 0 or maybe 1 PC player for the rest of civilians.
Really?
Of course. Well, think about it. If you maybe get sent off, are you bringing in the police into the district?
Yeah.
Right, okay, fine. Happened to me once, a station sergeant. But in those days, the FA said to the Met Police, you do the discipline. So I go on this discipline board. So I got sent off for his other PC. Pleaded not guilty. For that reason, the commander said, striking at a junior officer. I thought he was joking, and he might be, probably was. Anyway, Stuart comes, my witness, and he's how I go play out and play the game. We'd rather lose a good game. And then this guy on here said, Mr. Giblin, he said, didn't you play for the Met Police? He said, sir, I had that great honour to play for 104 times. This guy said, yeah, I'm a referee and I sent you off for striking an opponent against Hampton Town.
No.
And then the other bloke, that's it. And I sent to Stuart 104. How many times did you get sent? Only twice, he said. And what a chance of them both being. He's right. But it's different days because guess what the board did? They laughed.
Yeah, of course.
My star witness has gone. And I stuck out the wrist, and that was it. And I'm pretty certain the boss was joking, actually.
Yeah.
But no, he wouldn't.
But you're right.
He wouldn't be. So why would you play?
Yeah, why would you put your...
No, you wouldn't. So you play for an... well, you won't play. You won't play for representative. I played for the Met a couple of times. I wouldn't do it now.
No, because you don't get thanks for it.
Well, it could leave your career in jeopardy.
Mm. Yeah, definitely.
So I'd rather play for someone else, and nobody says anything.
You're anonymous.
We are anonymous, and who knows? That's it. That's my career.
Mate, it's been
great.
An absolute pleasure.
I tell you what, you know you're a CID officer because you're lying through your teeth. I can tell.
No, I absolutely mean it. I'm grateful for you driving up
That's
here.
right. Well, yes, you should.
And thank you very much for your time.
Absolute pleasure, mate.
And I will make sure that we'll see each other very soon.